Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller, the host of the Stoller Report, Real Estate Trends in the Tri-State Region. The topic of today's program is commercial office buildings in New York City. My guests include Billy Macklow, president of Macklow Properties, Jonathan Mechanic, chairman of the Real Estate Department at Fried, Frank, Harris, Shriver, and Jacobson, Ken Swig, principal of Swig Burris Equities, Rob Verone, managing director of Wachovia Securities, and last but not least, Norman Sterner, chairman and co-founder of Murray Hill Properties. About 2 weeks ago, the Real Estate Lenders Association hosted a meeting which I attended, and the guest speaker was John Kirker. John is the CEO and the managing director of Blackstone. And basically, he said, office buildings, we're worried. Values are going up, the fundamentals are deteriorating and down. It doesn't make sense to invest. Office market is much worse than people think. The worst is not over, maybe in the exception in New York or Washington. I asked him after his brief presentation, I said, what do you think about New York City? Because he said everywhere else it's this way. He said, we don't really like New York City, and I think it's been demonstrated because yesterday or today, PenCom, the PenCom building, which Taconic owned, was sold for $63 million. That was the last building that Blackstone owns, and their other property, which they own in partnership in New York City. Okay, Blackstone is the partner in the PenCom building. Blackstone is also the partner in 140 Broadway. And their last building, the other property that they owned was Worldwide Properties.
140 Broadway is, I think, Morgan Stanley.
Morgan Stanley back, Larry.
PenCom is actually with S.L. Green.
No, but it's PenCom with Blackstone. But in addition to him, Peter Malkin, a couple weeks ago, at the National Realty Club said, Peter, who always loves New York City, who's probably one of the people who has been the biggest supporter of New York City, said, I'm not buying in New York City anymore. Okay? I prefer Westchester, I prefer other parts of the area, but I've sold a number of properties. He said, I sold my property in Lower Manhattan a couple of years ago. He sold 1185, which he sold in 1998, which I believe Rob Finance, which is now going to be sold again. So here are two individuals, two leading entities who are saying they are not keen in office buildings in New York. And today I have a couple of office building owners who are keen, who are buying properties. And for example, Billy and his family, you know, in the same opposite direction, recently bought a building called the General Motors building for a mere $1.4 billion.
I have to say, I think, you know, good taste dictate. We drop off the one. We just referred it straight on the four. It just sounds a little better.
1-4?
No,
okay.
no, just four.
But what I'm saying is there are people, okay, 11 Madison is being sold for about $685 million. 1185 is being sold for what?
325.
325. It was acquired originally for $195 million in 1998, refinanced by you for $250 million a couple years ago?
Correct.
Okay. So you have these deans, you have these bright guys who are saying they're really not keen. Why are values increasing in real estate in New York? Let me open it to Billy or Ken.
Well, before you address values in New York real estate, I'd like to kind of address a point more about the investment philosophy of, say, a Blackstone or perhaps Malkin that I think creates a divergent point from the group of investors here. I mean, Norman and his business have been long-term committed owners in New York. Ken's family goes way back owning in New York, as does my family. I think Blackstone operates much more as an opportunity fund.
Okay, and what about Peter?
Well, Peter also has a big fund business. They syndicate
No,
out a lot of deals.
Peter, that's the other entity. Peter is operating in the mezz business in many aspects. Okay, Peter said he would prefer to be in the mezz business, in addition to one of your contemporaries, Steve Witkoff, last week at the mezz conference, said he wants to be in the mezz business.
But everybody's wanting to be in the mezz
he
business.
Prefers. Steve Witkoff says he prefers to be in the mezz business. He doesn't want to own anymore. He
It's
might,
an easier business. Unless he finds an opportunity to own, which is a good opportunity.
Yeah, but I also heard Steve is very active in London and a lot of other places, and still
in
has
Harlem.
a certain amount of velocity to his business. There is a bet in New York. There are certain things, whether it's the General Motors building or take the General Motors building as a specific, it is to a certain extent irreplaceable. And you find with that, it's in owning an entire city block that happens to be in 58th, 59th, Madison, and 5th. Every aspect of that block is arguably the best in the city, the best perhaps in the world from a locational value and equivalent. Whether it appears to be a high price or not, or a lower yield going in than, say, a Blackstone might look for, you know, there were still people that were committed to finance it, and there were still, you know, at least a dozen bids, qualified bids, over the $1.25 billion to $1.3 billion. And I think there's still a lot of smart money chasing New York real estate. And the question is, where do you add value, how do you add value, and what returns do you want to achieve on real estate? The broader community in 1996 thought my family was nuts for paying what appeared to be a high price at the time for 540 Madison. But in the long run, it turned out not to be a high price.
Billy, I'm not directing the comment to the Macklow family. I'm directing the comments to a variety of properties.
Oh, I know.
Okay?
I'm getting a good plug in for my family.
Okay, at dinner
all.
we were talking about 261 Fifth Avenue. Okay, Norman said he lost that in the beauty contest. Okay, there are a number of buildings
Same
over
bid.
there.
It was just an all-year
Let's take your
But
building.
you're just talking, generally you're talking about two people, right? Looking at the market, Malkin and Blackstone, those are two people who happen to be sellers. In order for anybody to be
and that's
a buyer,
why I have buyers
but
here.
in-
I have buyers and I have a lender
Michael,
over
but
here.
I'm saying, in order for anybody to be a buyer, there's got to be sellers combined with it, and without sellers, no buyers, and vice versa. So my
since you
point
grew
is
up,
that-
since you grew up
so
in San
have-
Francisco,
yeah, but I'm just saying,
Doug Shorenstein said it's great to be a seller, even though he's
Yeah,
buying.
but you have to buy to be able to sell.
You have to be
Larry Tisch said also, I remember
Okay.
having lunch with him years ago, he said he loved selling. I said, but you bought a lot of stuff over your life to be able to sell it.
Right.
The question you asked is why, what's going on? Two people that you mentioned, Blackstone and Malkin, are selling, and they're looking at elsewhere. There's a ton of people looking here, and what's driving what's driving the market.
And my question is,
Here's
what's
what-
driving?
Which I'm saying,
Okay, what's
400
driving
here,
Ken
I'll tell you,
Swig to buy his
480
third building
no, but that's it, but
in Lower
400
Manhattan?
In Manhattan in general, it's 480 million feet of space. Okay. It is the largest commercial market in the United States. In fact, if you take San Francisco, LA, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., and Boston and combine it, it doesn't equal Manhattan in terms of office space. It's an enormous marketplace in a very small area, which is an island, and there's going to be value here. So, you know, and real estate is cyclical, but because two people aren't buying, I would disagree entirely. I think, you know, the market is strong right now.
When you start a show, you have to use something as a lead-in, okay?
Yeah, it's good, but I'm saying I think the fundamentals are pretty good in New York
You also have to
City
realize
in
what's
general.
happening in New York City. You have families
Wait,
like
we should definitely. How much money did you put out this year?
we'll put out close to $5 billion. Not all in the city, but
And in New York City, how much?
in New York City, $2.5 billion, almost
In 2
$3.5
days.
billion.
Yeah, but you know, that was
But you
that
have
was
to
an
remember,
inside joke for my my viewers. Okay?
you have families like
my viewers don't really understand all this. Okay?
you have families like the families that are here today, and when they buy a building, they're not giving it back. You are losing. Inventory is being taken out of the for sale market. There are developers all over the city who buy, and they will never trade again that building. And that means when a good building comes up, there's going to be a lot of people chasing it, regardless of where cap rates or interest rates are. This is not as much product as it was.
You make a comment, sorry, John, about underlying fundamentals. And you have to understand what drives New York. Or I guess you're right, you know, sort of, you know, parroting Cockrell's comment about underlying fundamentals nationwide are still deteriorating. You know, New York, I think there's a certain stability that's returned to the market at this point. And the market can only get better. I don't think the market can get worse. I don't think we're going to have rampant explosion in employment that we did for the period of 97 to 2001.
You also don't have speculative building that's going to...
The capital markets have greatly inhibited that, and this time what has made the office market somewhat more challenging or put a bit of negative pricing pressure out there has been the sublease market. So for the first time, myself as an owner, I'm not competing against Norman or against Kent, but the landlords are now competing against tenants for spaces. And they'll start to backfill, the sublease market will start to burn off, and I think overall the owners will start to hold prices. And
if you add to that not only the influx of dollars, no inflation, a low cost of funds. I mean, someone offered us 10-year fixed money at a 6. That's enormous.
What was their name?
He can be a mortgage broker.
I want to be the broker. We'll get him over.
Norman, you're an owner of properties. You aren't being a lender yet or a mortgage
But that's
broker.
the point. I'm an owner of properties and therefore a borrower. And when I can borrow 75% of the cost of a property at a 6 for 10 years fixed, that's an enormous
You're still not happy though,
advantage.
because if I offer you 6 and you think you get 575, you're going to go and you're going to make another phone call. Borrowers are never happy. You say that now when rates were 8 or 9.
But his point is basically
you're right.
is that in a marketplace like this, you've got historically low interest rates.
Yeah.
You've got values which, in some parts of the city, for certain buildings, certainly are astronomically high as they've ever been. And as Billy was saying, you can't fall out of a ditch. We're in a position that we're probably coming out of a recession right now and getting stable. So opportunistically, it's a pretty good time to buy because you're fixing rates at a very, very low price, and you're going into a marketplace hopefully with some some legs to it that we're going back up. It's a perfect opportunity to buy in an environment that we're coming out of the stock market.
So I direct this question to you and to the other guests over here. If you had the opportunity, would you borrow on a fixed rate? Norman said, if you had a deal today, you want fixed rate financing or would you want LIBOR financing?
I would, again, depending upon how long I thought I would hold the property, as long as I had the ability without breakage to go for an assumption fee, which we did. 10 years out, 6% fixed today? Absolutely.
Michael, that really depends on...
It's asset specific.
It's asset specific, and it's also a question of, if someone's looking at it as a long-term hold where they're going to be in the property for 10 years, then it makes a lot of sense to lock in that kind of
Generally,
rate.
though.
But on the other hand, if you're doing something where you're repositioning an asset and you could have a much bigger cash flow in a year or 2 years, you might go for short-term money because you're going to have when you lock in, you don't want to lock yourself out of taking out those financing proceeds.
Until LIBOR goes
it
up.
depends on your vacancy factor, your rent up. It depends on
If I could fix, and do a long-term, absolutely.
It's
for me,
asset specific and it's business
But
plan
generally,
driven,
if you can
as John
lock in
says.
rates historically low,
especially when you know
as long as you don't have the prepayment penalties in there.
The issue is that
if you don't have a prepayment penalty in a heartbeat,
you're locking in your ability, in effect, to take additional money out of the property when you have a long-term debt with fixed rate, and then
don't we have other types of financing?
If you have a prepayment penalty, if you don't have a prepayment penalty,
but a lot of the financing doesn't permit, other than in connection with that particular loan, you putting on subordinate financing, either mezz financing or secondary financing in any other respect, other than people who break it up at the time you do the loan that says, I want to have the flexibility of breaking it up into a first and a second, or first and a mezz, or a junior piece. All that stuff happens at the same time, but generally you have a tough time negotiating for a right to put on subordinate financing unless you've got a property where you've got enough people looking at it that you get someone to be flexible on that issue.
Okay, but right now we just discussed 261. I know that your family's selling 369 Lexington. There are so many properties to the you're in contract and you're closing on 44 Wall Street, which Norman owned at one time a couple of years ago.
We sold it to him.
Okay. What I'm saying to you is...
I'd like to buy it back again.
I know.
One of my friends who happens to be director of finance at Cushman said to me that there are 30 bids, there are 40 bids, okay? It's a beauty contest. And Norman was bringing out before, he was the highest bid on 2 locations, right? Mm-hmm. You were the highest bid on 2 Park Avenue and also on 261. And you didn't win the beauty contest. What happened?
Because somebody came in and said they'll pay all cash and they'll go get a mortgage after acquisition.
Sure.
And the seller, and rightfully so, said, you know, there's no risk to closure. There's no risk as a surety of closing. They took $3 million less, the seller, on 2 Park Avenue.
He knows in 30 days he's going to bring
He's
in.
done.
He's done. He doesn't have to worry about any contingencies. There's no problem.
But
There's
even
no
that,
worry.
No macros problem.
But I tell you something. There's still a lot of people looking at the. You know, you look at 44 Wall Street. I think there were 200 and some people registered. Maybe 100 people got books, and 30 or 25 went through the building. But at the end of the day, there were only 5 or 6 significant players, which is a lot. I'm saying, but. You know, there's not thousands and thousands clamoring over this, but the market is strong, and
but look at the reasoning why it should be.
I think
the euro dollar's $1.25 to a dollar. The Middle East is pouring money into this country, and 50% of every dime that comes into this country winds up in New York somewhere.
The Germans?
The Germans are scared to death of inflation, so they're bringing money in, and they can accept a 5% return for the rest of their lives and be happy about it. So when you've got all of this money,
when it's syndicated out.
yeah, and when you've got all of this money flowing into a 17 square mile island, it's hard to go wrong. And if you're wrong now, just wait. You'll be right tomorrow. We've done this now for 34 years. And you know, there are cycles up, there are cycles down. At the end of the day, all you do is wait for the next cycle.
If you have the staying power to do it, you're 100% right.
If you want my opinion, the cycle's coming.
Our location, location, location. There is holding power, staying power. The markets do come back. We've seen the ebbs and flows of the market. At least, you know, kind of being the junior guy here, you know, my 12 years in the business, I've seen several cycles. And I started out as
12 years, and you've seen some cycles.
I started out, you know, at Manny Handy foreclosing on people as an analyst. And I saw the dark side.
You know, let's get to the subject of space. Shadow space, sublet space.
Secret space.
Secret space.
Outer space.
Wachovia recently bought Prudential Securities.
Correct.
Okay, you moved into this building where there's this law firm who has a couple 100,000 square feet.
Powerhouse law firm.
Powerhouse law firm.
Described.
You know,
Powerhouse
this
law
powerhouse law firm who has about
Expensive
350,000 square feet.
Sure.
You had 1.1 million square feet. You've put up 50% of the space for sublease. Okay, so you have that. Billy, as you said a couple years ago, your family acquired 340. Right now, you have 700,000 square feet of space that you're trying to rent over there. Mort Zuckerman had Boston Properties on Times Square. The tower isn't filled. He has 850,000 square feet.
Yeah, but that was a fluke, because that
Okay,
would have been filled.
I'm
If
talking.
Anderson didn't go out of business.
I'm
it would have
talking
been.
about today's situation. Okay,
Okay.
Bloomberg has 180,000 square feet building available. You have Vornado, 140,000 square feet at 640 Fifth Avenue.
Michael, there's 488 million feet in this city. What do you think that all adds up to? 14%? 15%? At 7, you're 100% leased just for the people that move around. We're not that
And who's
far.
leasing? I mean,
Leasing?
today's New York
I have
Times.
60 people in my office that make a living.
I agree, but who's leasing? I just want to bring out, you know, since this is a group of people who are in the real estate, and my viewers are a variety of people who watch CUNY TV, they want to learn a little bit about the marketplace. They want to know what's happening. You know, we bring up the subject of shadow space. They don't know what shadow space. Mezzanine? They don't. They think it's the
second floor.
It's a second floor where FAO Schwartz is. Okay,
Well, if it's done
Well,
properly,
you have
it's
to
a
be nice to your
mechanical deduct.
viewers.
It doesn't
Right,
count
I have to
against
explain
FAR.
that.
You can explain, but you have to be nice.
Right, no, we have to
I
explain.
think they're more
And what I'm
savvy.
trying to say is that we're in a cycle, okay, and I think the market is only recovering, okay? I think landlords are reducing the concessions.
To
Okay.
a certain extent, it's what I said before. The landlords were competing about tenants, and you were going to mention the New York Times. I assume you're going to mention the New York Times article about Grand Central Tower today, which is one of my family's building, which was what I
We
would
weren't going to
refer
mention it. You know, it's in a publication that I don't write for. So, you know, the New York Sun, I would, because, you know, beginning in January, I'm the real estate columnist there.
Plug.
So, you know, I just want to do that.
I know, but I'm plugging myself too. But you talk about who's
Right,
leasing.
and if you want title insurance, you come over here. That's why I have lenders and, you know, First
But
Americans here.
you talk
Plug.
about who's leasing. New York is, out of the 488 million square feet of inventory, on a typical annual basis, about 18 to 20 million square feet of space is leased. Okay, last year we were probably at about 12 million as
Oh,
the
no, it was
market.
18
the market
million
went
last year.
down.
It was a big year last
No,
year.
last year wasn't 18.
It was pretty close. It was a big
Last
year
year was
last
close to 18 million.
It was a big year last year.
The real estate board and the New York EDC said this year, for 30,000 plus square foot, 15 million has been leased, and that doesn't include the smaller space.
The
But the
smallest
market-
we had was 19, I think it was 1989, 1990 we went in, or 1991, I think New York City had like 13.8 million feet.
Right.
And the highest year we ever had was 24.6.
So we're not so terrible.
The thing is,
No, it's not.
there's always opportunity and movement. I give you contrasting. Okay, San Francisco in 1986, the entire city of San Francisco leased 400,000 feet gross, not absorption, the whole thing, but you know, just giving perspective.
When was the moratorium on construction?
That
San
was
Francisco
in
listed?
86. Now the
lifted
volume, even bad now, San Francisco is about 4 or 5 million feet at the worst. But the point is that there's always activity and movement in New York City. And the bulk of it is, you know, the tenants probably, you know, between 10,000 and 75,000 feet. Service tenants and businesses,
Isn't
law
it true
firms,
that
accounting
service
firms,
tenants are
it's
the
bulk of it.
major people taking space? Service tenants,
Today.
investment bankers today.
Sure.
Okay.
But I think I also think
As
if you-
opposed
if you
to
talk the broker-
manufacturing.
There's no more
There's no more. I mean,
manufacturing is gone.
But that's what New York
It became
City is now.
residential.
It's we're a service business.
But I think you're also seeing, at least you know, in terms of the brokers that I speak to and deals that we're seeing in the office, that I think there's an increase in activity. That people who were sitting on the sidelines, you see more people in the market. There's the brokers are busier, lawyers are busier, and I have a sense of an upswing in the market coming in.
I think in the same manner that Norman just said before, if you can get a deal for 6% on a mortgage for 10 years, if you can get a lease, okay, with 6 months free rent, okay, with a tenant build out of $60 a foot, depending on what the area is.
60.
60.
That's for 2 floors.
Okay. Depends on who the contractor is. Okay, you know.
you get $30 worth of value, you know.
Yeah, Michael, we have done more leasing in 2003 than we did in 2001 and 2 combined.
Same for us.
And our niche is somewhere between 5,000 and 25,000 feet. We don't deal with the 100,000 foot tenant, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I'm not sure. But there is a palpable difference between a year and a half ago when people came by that you knew weren't going to lease, and today when they're saying, if you don't lease today, you've missed the boat, because
Right, and that's what I'm saying. You should lock your leases, and that's what people are doing.
but that leads to.
It's a great time.
But if you say that, then that leads to now's the time to buy. Because if you feel that the market's going up and your occupancy is going to go to the mid-90s as a percentile, now's the time to buy property.
Okay. I mean, all of the major buildings, 11 Madison has 100% occupancy.
Sure.
GM building had 100% occupancy.
90.
1185 has 100%.
But 11 Madison has leasing risk. The major tenant has rolling cancellation rights. None of the deals are straightforward. You talk about 1185.
1185 has a major risk. It has a 40-year land lease.
The ground lease.
Okay,
is
ground
adverse.
lease with 2005, the rent can go up at a market rate.
Yeah, but it's also got West Point Stevens in there. It's $7 a foot. You know, $12 with a third of the building or 25% of the buildings to a tenant that's at $7 a foot on 6th
Yes.
Avenue. So yeah, any step up in the ground rent's going to be offset by any tenant and any.
You want to talk about 1177?
That
They bought
is-
that building.
Is that the
paid a fortune.
Jamestown building?
Paramount.
No, Paramount.
Thinking that Price Waterhouse had to stay. Now they're looking at a 500,000 foot vacancy.
Well, actually,
and tenants going in, you got a couple
the
people going in there
entire
now.
building is available, not on a direct basis. Every tenant has
Where?
their space
At
out in the market at
1177?
1177 out for takeover. It appears that one of the city's major law firms, a firm of similar caliber and size to Fried Frank, is close to executing a lease for about
Not quality.
250,000 square feet
Not quality.
at
I got your back.
1177
I got your back.
of the Price Waterhouse space.
Yeah.
It's a very complicated deal. You have to ask, why is that entire building in play by the tenants, not by ownership?
Well,
Someone missed about that.
No, all I'm saying is here a foreign company came in, took on a sizable asset, but there's risk. There are no sure things in this city. Nobody gives you a guarantee, but you look at the economy, you look at the fact that we're an island, you look at the fact that there's a presidential election coming, you're looking at no inflation, you're looking at easy money and plentiful. and you're looking at an asset that can't be replaced.
$5 billion?
Nothing's
Not
easy.
so easy.
Nothing's
Not so
easy.
easy,
But
but
New York
nothing's
is the
easy,
financial,
exactly.
cultural,
Media.
capital, media of the world. It still comes here. People still want to come here. I think, in terms of residential rentals, I've never seen a more challenged residential market. It's very competitive. Yet the cranes are still out there and the building permits are still pulling. And whether it's rental housing being built or the sales product being built, the construction continues apace.
And the
It is
conversions.
unbelievable.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know what? Let's talk about downtown. Okay, downtown Cadwallader sold their property. It's going to be converted to residential.
53 walls.
63
walls.
63
Never
walls,
been converted
67
to
wall.
You got.
One
You have
exchange.
to qualify the Cadwallader comment, though. Cadwallader.
I'm
had
talking about the space.
But
I'm
they
not
had
talking
no. They
space,
had
right.
outgrown their space, and part of their deal was also a commitment to downtown, and they sold it to make their lease and double their commitment.
But the other side of that, Billy, is that all of these conversions are going to take more buildings out of the inventory for commercial. That just makes everybody, I mean, it's almost like a stock buyback from a corporation.
Yeah.
It simply
Well,
makes everybody
much
else.
But it also
It's
creates
close to
all that
11 million
additional
feet of
residential
space.
downtown.
Right. 11 million feet of space has been taken out of the inventory
Right. It's a-
downtown since 1996.
It's
It's a lot of
It's-
space, with another 2 million coming up.
More than 11. I mean,
No, for conversions, residential
right.
conversions.
Okay, residential
Not-
conversions.
But the residential
We're not
conversions-
talking about loss.
No. But the residential
Pure,
conversions are
simple.
great for downtown in
It's
terms
a
of
lot of space.
expanding the the residents downtown and turning it more into a 24/7 community,
And it will
which is
be.
really important for downtown.
It's critical.
And you're
And once
seeing
you
more
do
and more
that-
of that.
And once you do that, office space then becomes where you live and work within 5 blocks, like
Right,
you can
it's
do it
easy
in
walking
Midtown to the
distance.
east side. So when you ask the question about why are people buying because they're smart.
Right. But sitting over here, the only person who's really buying downtown would be you. I mean, Maclell has prime properties in Midtown. I mean, you in the two different entities, I mean, you have a significant amount of properties in the Swig-Weiler portfolio. But on the Swig-Burris properties, you have 3 buildings, you have 2. You're in your third mode, you're acquiring 44 wall. Okay. What do you like about downtown?
You know, looking around the U.S. in general at where you want to place investments, if you want to be in real estate, happen to be.
I mean,
real-
I'm very
no,
keen.
happen to be real estate. I think what attracts me to downtown is a couple things. Number one, it's a concentrated area. It's the 3rd largest city in the United States all by itself, right? It's coincidentally physically connected to the 1st largest commercial-based city, which is Midtown. And yet the values and the discrepancy of the values are the highest almost it's ever been. So the values itself, I think, are skewed downward. And so what I've looked at is from a macro-oriented point of view as opposed to a macro-oriented point of view.
I'll chime in a minute.
I'll second that.
Macla only knows Midtown. They like
Macla knows
Midtown.
everything
Downtown
about
all the
downtown
time.
and
He's doing-
Midtown.
they're doing-
But they only
building downtown
doing
right
site
now.
down
Well,
there.
that's
building
Soho.
one,
We're
right.
going to get to
still
Soho in a
downtown.
little while.
Downtown is downtown.
But I'll tell you
the question of
I'll
downtown
tell you
is what is
attracts me.
downtown?
Here, let me
South of 42nd
South,
Street.
right. No,
Correct. South of 42nd
South of
Street.
Houston. But I'll tell you what.
Boy.
Here's what it is. Look, I think, number one, you're going to have the biggest obstacle prior to 9/11, the biggest obstacle post 9/11 is the fact that there was no transportation there. It's the only major city in the United States without a major transportation hub. That's going to be remedied. It's got a wonderful architect that's going to build and actually get done, and the money's there, the land is there, and they're going to get a great transportation hub. That's one of the things that attracts me. Number two, you've got a very sizable growing residential population base, and one of the things that was missing in downtown was that it was a 9-to-5 situation. One of the things missing was the population living there.
But that was
growing.
created in 1994.
But
the
it's
initial,
growing. It's
okay?
growing and
When
growing and
Giuliani
growing.
came in, he made the
But
changes in the
that's
residential.
happening, and
when
finally,
Rockrose was the first
but it's finally
person
caught
over
on,
there, right.
and it's going very, very well. The other thing that's going on, I think, is that there's a lot of negative artificial pressure. That's, to me, based on misperceptions. And I think they'll change, whether it changes 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. It's an artificial perception. If you ask the average person, what's the vacancy rate downtown versus midtown? You'll say the vacancy rate downtown is double. Fact of the matter is the vacancy rate is slightly less than midtown. If you ask people who wants to live downtown, everybody says nobody wants to live down there. The occupancy rate, residential rental,
99%
is the highest anywhere in Manhattan
Correct.
right now.
But part of that,
But
part of that,
for whatever the
rent-
reasons, for
They gave-
incentives
they gave-
or not.
Incentives,
They gave away
no,
a lot.
But that's but
they
it's
gave
fact.
away the incentive.
What's the difference
But
of
it's
why
fact.
is
It
happening?
works. It
Yeah,
works.
yeah,
And
yeah.
what
Take
happens,
apart
you know,
this-
I asked Tom
but those
Alganian
people-
a couple weeks ago on the show, I said, what happens to these people in
They
the
all move?
incentives?
You think they're all going to move
I
the
said
minute
no.
it comes? No.
Excuse me, he's building a building that
He's building
blocks out the light.
628 units. He's
And
building
he blocks
600
out the light on my building,
and-
okay? So if he were afraid, he wouldn't be doing it.
And he's doing it
and he
with Liberty
re-rented
Bond.
45 Wall, right, at rents that were in excess of where he was before
Absolutely.
he emptied it out when they were going to do the deal on the stock
the
exchange.
stock exchange, correct.
And
All the buildings like that.
faster and higher than what he was when he started, after emptying out the whole building so that they could demolish the building in
The thing
connection
is,
with the stock
there's
exchange
a very
project.
strong critical mass going on. So what attracts me is if I look at the demographics of what's going on, and I look and I sort of peel away all the misperceptions in there, you've got an environment with, to me, extremely artificially low prices relative to Midtown Manhattan. You can take an $800 a foot building and you look at a $146 a foot building. There shouldn't be that kind of extreme in the same city. We have the same government, we have the same transportation. It's not saying that
800, I think
I'm
it
not
was
saying that,
837
you
a
can't-
foot. We're
I'm
not
not
sure.
saying
What's the
that-
average price in Midtown?
No, but I'm
Kent's
saying it's
personalizing
it's
this.
skewed. No. It's skewed. The values are skewed. It shouldn't be that far. Even look at.
But the
one,
values aren't
it's-
so much
it's-
skewed as they are determined by rents.
Right.
And
but I
there's
think the
still-
rents are
and-
skewed downwards artificially a little bit right now.
Look, you can also
Technology.
25 years ago
So-
or 30 years ago, the Grand Central District was the must-have neighborhood in New York, and it was all terminal proximity driven. Over time, as that area was really built, populated by, as rather the available land got built, there was nowhere left for the developers to go. But they still wanted to be in the East Side, and thus the creation of the Plaza District. And you saw a lot of the emphasis of the stronger financial tenants move from Grand Central to Plaza. And I think there has always
and
been.
now into Times Square. I mean,
And now to Times Square is absolutely right.
And
But I think
what about the West Side? Do you think when Schumer did the report in 2000, the Committee of 35, they said that the West Side needs office buildings?
well, no, that you were
That's-
looking.
we don't need
no, you were
more
looking at an
buildings.
environment with 4% vacancy.
That's
There
right.
was people. You know, they hit the quintessential top of the marketplace, and people
What
started
about the
getting
West
nervous.
Side? What about the West Side? Not Times Square. Let's
You
talk
have a
about.
passport to get there? I don't know. No.
Okay, that's right. You need a passport. But
No.
what about the West Side? You know, Hudson Yards. What's your opinion of that area today for a commercial office building?
I don't know it all that well. I mean, I know where it is.
Mr.
we did,
Mechanic? Mr. Mechanic?
It's
Well, I think right now you're looking at the potential for a Jet Stadium on the west side. I think that's an exciting concept. I think if that gets done, I think that will
Rail yard.
right
The,
on the, yeah.
Rail
Haven't they
station.
agreed to move the
Javits
post
Center
office?
The
expanding.
post office,
post office
is
definitely, but
that's
right.
that's
big.
not the-
But
No,
the
no,
question
but
is-
that's moving west.
One block.
Excuse
Moving to
me.
8th Avenue.
that's a big block.
It's on 8th Avenue.
It's moving to 9th, right?
Thank you. Now
this-
you're
but
starting to move west.
Right, but
The
aren't
Olympics
you
are
doing
com-
a large loan over there?
I mean, we did Starrett. We're doing it a second time. We did Chelsea Market twice, and we're doing 450 West 33rd. So
But if
And
you
we're
look,
closing it
if
with
you,
you.
if you look around,
that's right. We're pretty much all over the West Side.
if you take Kent's theory about downtown and about the influx of residential development, either ground up or conversions, a lot of the land that's available to either be aggregated or straight out developed today is in that area on the far west side. If I were to take a long bet on land, that's absolutely where I go. You see it now with the beginnings of a lot of residential development. If the Jet Stadium happens, if the expansion of the Javits Center happens, if Dr. Off and Bloomberg's plan of the
If the
economic
Olympics
future
happens.
of New
Yeah,
York
but it's
occurs,
It's a longer
it's-
play. I
it's
agree
ab-
with
It is
you.
a long
It's
play,
30 to
but
50.
every
But you
development
said
is.
30 to
said Times-
50. No.
but you said Times
It's
Square.
good.
Times Square redevelopment was 20 to 25 years until it was
Absolutely.
ultimately
Wait a second.
realized and tenanted.
Jonathan, when did George Klein get involved with Times Square?
1982.
1980s.
Thank you.
Right.
That's
Okay,
81,
took
82,
16 years,
83.
17 years.
That's the point. That's what I'm saying.
Right.
It's a 20-year program. It's not a
20-year
50. It's not a
program.
50-year
Right.
program.
But it's a-
no,
it's
no,
a
but
longer
over there for the planned city that they're planning, okay, if you've looked at the two of the plans, it's a
It
30 to
needs some-
50-year plan.
You know what? It
Yes.
needs some critical mass, and it's a good play. Maybe ultimately, I think the land play, as Billy said, I think that's a great play. But you have to. That's putting money in, not getting a return,
Right, but you
and
know,
then waiting for.
Kent, you know, Rob just said that he's very keen, and I agree, on 450 West 33rd Street.
Sure.
Okay, it's a prime property.
It's been phenomenal. Look where they were 10 years ago, and
right.
look where they are today.
Associated Press took 290
That's
square feet.
800,000 square feet of development rights, just
Right.
with the property. So
It's a
And
great
we're in the
property.
we're representing Max in the process of buying out its partners or doing a restructuring of the deal and doing the debt from Wachovia. And they're very excited about the project. And I think that's all part of this perception of additional development going west.
Let's get a little bit off Manhattan, because the show is the tri-state region, and we talk about there are 5 boroughs.
Really?
So what are
Okay. Wow. Not the Norman. Norman.
Norman?
I
Didn't
don't
you
leave
grow up
Manhattan.
in Brooklyn?
Yeah, I did, but I
But he left.
Yeah,
Okay.
I left.
You don't think anything? You don't think Bruce is going to be
No.
able to build a...
I wish everybody well in the boroughs. The
He's
last
done
time I was there, I
phenomenal.
got
Bruce has done phenomenal.
Bruce has done
in Brooklyn.
phenomenal.
And
Yeah.
he's got a
And
very
it's been a-
exciting project that he's looking at now in connection with the arena, depending on where that ultimately sorts itself out.
What about Long
Brooklyn,
Island City? What happened to Long Island City
I think
offices?
it's a great place. I think that's a great residential place. But
A great residential space.
absolutely.
Long
but,
Island City.
But absolutely.
Yes.
But one of the things you have to look at.
It's
I
convenient.
was looking at a site there, actually pretty currently, and one of the things.
Do you need a good lender? We know a good lender. We know a good attorney. We know a good.
You know what? A good lender is one who lends and closes the deal.
That's right.
That's it. But one of the things you have to look at there when we're designing this building is, it was originally, we walked into somebody else's design, which was typically a Manhattan design. It's still, the area still, you treat it as a suburban and marketplace. You need parking,
Look what happened
pool,
to Williamsburg.
outdoor.
I mean, everything. You know,
No, but that is
Different. That's the trend-driven.
It's
Long Island
a
City
really
is
suburban market,
high-rise
which happens to be one
construction.
subway stop from Manhattan. But I think it's a terrific place. You got great views. You're going to have a lot of light and air. You've got the water, but it needs infrastructure. But over time, I think that's anywhere 7 to 15 years is going to be a great place to be.
And we also talked about George Klein. I mean, George is doing that development on Greenpoint, which is a whole waterfront development across the river in Brooklyn on the waterfront. Consistent with all the city policies about developing the waterfront with really high-end, townhouses and high-rises. I mean, it's a fabulous opportunity, and for really taking a part of the waterfront that's been underutilized.
right, and also property which was brownfields and other situations.
But if you listen to a lot of what we're saying, it's interesting. One of the things that makes areas, new up-and-coming areas, whether it's the West Side, downtown is certainly not a new and upcoming area, but it's germane to downtown, Long Island City, Brooklyn, is the fact that you've got to integrate mixed uses of residential and commercial, and I think
And that's
for
why
urban
Manhattan
environments, it's
has to
very
become a
important.
24/7, which is
Absolutely.
happening.
One of the problems is that people complained prior to 9/11 about going downtown. Big 2 complaints. One, transportation system, which was weak, and the second thing that they complained about was the fact that there's no services. And the services aren't going to go in unless you end up having people to service more than just a 9-to-5 situation. So what really makes these areas work, I think, particularly well, is the integration of both residential, commercial, and that, I think, is happening in Long Island City a bit. It's happening certainly in Brooklyn a lot more right now. And I think that's got to happen on the West Side to make that
Before we got
work.
to the subject of downtown, you're developing a former garage, gas station.
The Amoco gas station and the Whale of a Wash car wash, yes.
And the Whale of the Wash. And what are you doing over there?
We're building a 120,000 square foot office building, available for lease now. Thank you.
We don't have any. We do have
212.
We do have.
Don't we have a sign?
No,
I
we
was
have.
gonna say, if you need some brokers.
You need some brokers. We have Murray Hill Properties. I mean,
No,
besides being an owner.
It's a very exciting development, all joking aside, because what you really have is it's block front. And 120,000 square feet, it's not an enormous building, but the value creation and the potential of that today is enormous. All of the traffic counts, economic statistics, and the furthering residential development in Soho really are staggering. And the retail, it has a retail...
What do you feel the commercial rents will be?
I think the commercial rents will be achievable at $50 a foot. And it's justifiable because there is no new construction in the Soho-NoHo market. What has been built new was for Scholastic. It's an owned facility, and it's kind of different.
But
when you look
you
at
have to
the building-
qualify. You're going after a very specialized tenant too.
But
it's not just a typical.
No, it's
so that's why you could.
they're 15,000-foot tenants.
Right.
You're absolutely right, Kent. And what we're developing is Park Avenue, 6th Avenue quality glass and steel construction in Soho. Yeah. So the base building package comes along and puts you easily $20 to $25 a foot ahead of that which you would have to invest where you rent at the Puck building or other comparable Soho buildings. And it's finding the right tenant, and it's different fundamentals. If you take a building out of Norman's portfolio or Kent's portfolio or my family's portfolio, and you're looking to lease it, your canvas effort, your tenant is really going to come out of your canvas efforts, most likely from a 10-block radius of your building. You're going to be able to pretty much look and see where you get your tenant from. This is specialized. You know, I think we're going to get a tenant traveling north to go south, or even a tenant traveling south to come to the building because it represents a unique ability for branding.
People want to be in Soho, NoHo.
But the building will be...
There's a certain type want to
Do
be
you
in
get
that
any
area.
of the subsidies for downtown?
No.
No, it's
No, the building is
It's on the other
it's
side of the
conventionally
line.
financed and is as of right.
What is the address?
610 Broadway? It's
Broadway
the
and
entire
House.
westerly block
right
front.
across the street from Crate and Barrel.
Yes, it's the northerly
Yeah, no, it's
block front of House and
That's a
Street,
little
Broadway,
skewed in
Crosby
terms of
Street.
$50 a foot.
And you all have all
It's
that
gonna be-
residential
no,
housing
but
going
tougher not, but
up
it's
and
gonna be
down
skewed
Hampton
because
Street,
it's,
right
it's
across
very
the street.
specialized.
It's a boutique.
Yeah,
It's a boutique.
But the
It's-
retail is tremendous there as
The
well.
retail is excellent.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about that. Would you lend on that property?
I would lend anything the Macklows want. No, honestly, I mean, we'd have
I
to.
know you should.
You
says
know,
that.
you realize that this show is on
Where
the
were
World
you
Wide
last
Web.
week?
It goes to North Carolina.
That's fine.
Okay.
That
we'd
was the
have to-
exculpatory clause we just signed.
That's
that we,
right.
Anything we can say can't be used against us.
You
That's
didn't
what-
return my call last week.
Listen, they had tenants, and we looked at the rent
You would
roll,
lend
sure.
to anyone over here because we have a great group over here.
Rob and my family have done business together, and it's a relationship we
No,
look
but
forward to
my
continue.
real question is: here's a new building. I'm trying to get an idea of underwriting.
He can't lend on it because they have a lender already, so he can't
Yeah.
answer that question.
Okay.
If it was leased up, sure. If you needed a bridge loan, sure. I mean, it's all a matter
was
of
leased
price
up.
and economics and loan. I mean, there's I don't want to say there's a loan. There's a loan for every project, but there's a loan for every
But you're not a
project.
construction lender.
I'm not, but
Right, and our project
Right,
is
it's a
being
construction.
financed with a significant equity commitment and a proper construction lender. When we have the building stabilized and we're looking towards our takeout, you bet we're going to talk to Rob.
Okay, I have a question. You know, before at dinner, I was talking to Kent, and Kent was talking about 44 Wall. I mean, you've done an excellent job at 48 Wall. You've done a great job right now at 5 Hanover, and you're acquiring 44 Wall. And I was asking you about your financing, and you were telling me that you're obtaining 88% in financing.
Plus or minus, yeah.
Okay. Norman, you and I are a little older, not wiser, a little older. Okay. When was the last time you saw 88% financing?
It's offered every single
Every
day.
day.
Okay.
Every
It
single
can be,
day.
and it can be more.
Your idea, yeah, I was going to say you can get to the 90s, but your idea is the amount of risk that you're willing to take as opposed to the amount of equity you're willing to put up.
Okay, so it's a layering.
It's not even a layering. As I said, if the 88%, and I don't know, but if the 88% were fixed and it's long term, jump on it with both feet.
Wait a second. I'm not, as a borrower, I would jump on it also. All I'm trying to get to is that 10 years ago, before securitized mortgages, before CMBSs, you had traditional mortgages. You received 70%, up to a certain amount, 80%, and then you might
Except
have
for the 80s when we got 105%.
right,
110%.
Those were the good
No,
days.
Those were days.
Those were the times you look for.
Yeah, that's how I met Norman.
Exactly.
No, that's how I met Norman when we were lending.
I was right there. So I put my kids through school.
But what I'm saying, which I'd like my viewers to understand, when someone is getting 88%, that's really a packaged loan,
sure.
okay? And how is it traditionally packaged today?
I mean, you just have different forms of debt. You usually have an investment
So
grade
why
first
don't we
mortgage.
talk about the different forms of debt, and let's also get a little idea of the different pricings that you have for the different forms of debt.
Fixed or floating.
Let's talk.
Do floating.
Let's
so
do
it's easy.
floating. It's easier.
And your investment grade piece, which is probably
The
for
first
this show
60%.
60%. LIBOR 100,
LIBOR today is what?
1.12.
Okay, so it's a 2.2 on the
Just-
on the first
I can't believe
50%.
For the first 60%.
Okay, next.
Can I just interrupt? Banks used to lend each other at higher rates than that. So just going back to what Norman said.
LIBOR hasn't been this low in
I'm
years.
just saying, looking at the values of, just
But we're
the
trying to
perspective.
get
No, go ahead.
we're trying
I
to get
didn't
the
wanna interrupt,
viewers an
but it's just
idea because you know
every
what
time
happens.
I love hearing that.
The
Every time
lender
somebody
is
says
going
that,
to be protected because Fried Frank is going to be representing them on the document.
We have to look at this.
No,
When you
no,
sell-
You think John's sitting on this? You think it's coincidence he's sitting on this side?
I'll do stuff for Veron.
No, I purposely put him in. I
You'll
put
do
him
it
in
for
the
everybody all at once. Come on.
I put him in the middle of two clients also.
Sorry. No.
Okay, I put him in the middle of two of his clients and also two friends. Okay.
That's
But by the way, you have to
true on all
realize,
counts.
we'll take the most senior part of that loan and sell it at LIBOR plus 18 in Germany. So, you know,
Wait a second. You will take.
when we sell that investment grade loan, we create a AAA bond, a AA bond.
Right.
That super senior AAA sells at LIBOR 19. LIBOR 17, I think, was the last floater that was done. So, I mean, at LIBOR 100, I'm theoretically doing that because I'm making money at that level. It's not. I'm not doing it just to
Because
make
he's
these
breaking
guys
it up
more
into
money.
Okay,
pieces.
so
What they
you're
do is
selling
they
at
break it
LIBOR
up into
18, so you have basically.
No, that's just the one tranche. I mean,
They
there's a break
break-
even
Okay, but
number.
now let's get to the next tranche. Let's get to the.
Well,
That's tranched up all the place
Okay.
too. So they,
Sure.
Right.
So the next tranche is maybe another, if that's 60, another 10, 15% at LIBOR 400. And then depending, what was that, 88% leverage? You probably have a LIBOR 600 tranche and a LIBOR 900 tranche. So
but
all in, you're probably
but all into
300?
us. All into us, we're
You were at about
six-
7,
Oh, no,
6 and a half.
that's higher.
6.
Yeah.
So all in, you're at 6. Yeah.
But when you count in the reserves and cap costs,
What in this particular deal, what we're doing is we're financing the deal, and then we're capitalizing it with a fair amount of money for improvements in the building and for future tenant improvements. The building doesn't happen to have a lot of turn until 2009.
no, but
But
you're a
what's your cash
long-term
on
holder.
cash? I mean, that's the
Go ahead.
question. I mean,
No, but really, Kent, you're a long-term holder.
it's great. It's great.
It's good. It's good.
Thank you, Billy, for pointing
It's in
that
double
out.
digits. That's a good thing. It is in double digits, you know.
No, my point is, if you're a long-term holder, why would you go through all of these tranches and knowing you're going to get 3 plus 2 ones?
Here, tell you.
Am I correct, Rob?
yes.
You're going to get 3 plus 2
Yeah,
ones?
3 plus
Here's
2
what-
ones.
You're going to have to buy a cap for the first 2 years or for years 2 and 3?
For years, the
Buy
first
cap
2 years,
the whole
which is
time.
Now you
about
got to come back out to the
$88,000,
market
right?
when everything
Because
gets hot
we
in
want
year
to.
3?
No, we're going to go. We'll finance probably sometime between 3.5 and 5. That will do that.
When you mean refinance?
Refinance, yeah.
And then you'll look to
Long-term.
get stabilized
Right.
fixed.
And if we can do it sooner, we'll do it sooner.
Which
But
is what
right
you're
now-
trying to do right now at
5
5
Hanover
Hanover.
Square. We bought it in August, and we happen to be in the marketplace
Which I gave the
now.
exclusive to Wachovia on this morning. So
Yeah.
in case anyone's
As
listening.
long as he says yes.
As
No.
Rap said, he was going to step up big time.
But that one, and the reason we're doing that is simply because we want to clean up and fix it into a long rate deal right now.
Let's go to another concept. At all these seminars and all these programs, people are talking about the subject of loan to own. Okay, certain people alluded at certain seminars that Vornado, who basically said they loved the GM building, but they felt it was a little too pricey, provided some financing for that building, and Soros. There are a number of other lenders.
That's actually not accurate. Vornado purchased a debt piece in the aftermarket. Vornado had no involvement with us.
No, not with you. I'm saying they didn't, not directly, but they came in later. Why did they? Why would a Vornado or Soros or a Witkoff or a file organization, all of these people, or even a Malkin, okay, go into these situations and provide debt as opposed to buying the properties?
I think in the case of the REITs, when you look at Vornado or SL Green, with different balance sheet capabilities and the ability to work their lines and achieve 10, 12, 15% returns, it's easier
It's an easier dollar.
than going out, buying
Absolutely.
a building, renovating it,
Well, they can go
getting
after the
tenants,
building. If they don't
doing
get it,
deals.
they're going to still take a piece of it in some other way.
Well, it also allows them to put a portion of their capital at work at a rate that's higher than some of the returns that they might otherwise be able to
And
get
You're
at that
right,
point
it's
in time.
easier money.
But they're also
Yes.
in the real estate business. So at the end of the day, if there's a problem,
They're-
you're getting to the question: is it risky for them?
Right.
Is
Is it risky for both sides?
But
Okay,
but for
is it
them,
risky
at the
for
end of
the-
the day, if there's a hiccup in any of their deals, so they end up feeling comfortable with a piece of real estate that they would own, that they probably were bidding on in the first place, and didn't get, so it's another way to participate in the property, and if it doesn't work out, they could own the property someday. So if you're just a pure lender, I don't think Wachovia is looking necessarily to say, okay, I'm going to go invest in this, I'll take a piece of the deal, and at the end of the day, if it's not working out well, great, I'm an owner, I'm going to own. They're a bank, it's a different story. Yeah. So what you're seeing, I think, there are a lot of people who are in the real estate business participating in real estate through mezzanine lending, and if
there's a lot more
things
people
don't go
talking
back,
about than actually
right.
doing.
But if they don't, if it doesn't go well,
but
they're in there. They have the capability of running it.
There's a lot of money out there.
Sure.
Okay, there's a lot of mezz money. There's a lot of primary money. Everybody wants to put out money.
Sure. But if you look at, if you look at like the File organization, they've been active in the mezz market. But they've been in the mezz market in many circumstances.
They've been in the mezz market for close to 40 years,
okay,
if you
right,
want to look
exactly.
at it that way.
And they bid on assets to the extent the asset got above a price point where they were prepared to purchase it. They ended up doing the mezz pieces. They knew the asset. They could underwrite the asset. They did it. And, they're happy.
Herald Square is a very good example. They did the preferred equity. Okay, so they did the preferred equity because they wanted to be in the deal. The Enron building in Houston, we're not talking about Houston. Okay, the building cost $300 million. Chorus gave a $60 million loan. They won it for $20 million. $20 million on 1 million square feet. It's not a bad deal.
And if you have the capability of running and leasing the property at the end of the day.
That's right. And that's why Vornado does, and why the File organization, Green has a situation. Let's get to the subject, which was a big item in the news a month ago. Liberty bond financing for Midtown office buildings. Okay, none of you are building anything in Midtown, but...
well, 340 counts as a 750,000 square foot development project in Midtown.
Okay, but you started that probably before the Liberty bonds.
Yes.
Okay?
You got Liberty bond financing?
No.
You didn't get Liberty bonds.
No, but I think there's only one project, I think that's...
Well, here's the thing.
But the controversy,
maybe
you
two.
can't...
That's okay. My question is about
yeah.
Liberty bond and utilizing Liberty bonds outside of the zone.
But you know what the problem with the commercial side is? The way the law is written, it doesn't work for the commercial properties that they wanted, they've really intended. Other than brand new development, it's very, very difficult. And we had a very low cost basis at 5 Hanover. And we're renovating it and doing all the things that would be necessary to qualify for Liberty bonds. It doesn't pencil out for commercial. And so they've got all this money geared to.
There's no money,
but they got
there's no residential money left.
No, not the commercial side. They got a lot of money. They got $1.7 billion in the commercial side of this thing. They have all this money that they want to put out downtown, where it should be parked, frankly. It's there to stimulate activity. From my point of view, it should be spent on people buying projects, commercial buildings, and revitalizing those buildings and putting them back into good use to retain tenants and do things. There's no way to get to it because it doesn't underwrite.
All of the
so they're going to have this money, other than Larry
like
Silverstein. No, but other than Larry Silverstein, who's going to build 7 World Trade, and he should get underwriting for that. There's no place they can do it. What they need to
Goldman
do
says they want to do it right now on the site.
It's a brand new buildings. It works. But one of the things that it should be also doing is to take older buildings, I think, and re-stimulate them and fix them up. And there's no way to get to it. Residential works beautiful.
It works 100%.
And it's done.
But they also put $1.7 billion in the commercial side, and they didn't write the law properly. They missed it. But for a couple words, and those couple words are significant, it doesn't work. So they've got this money, and they don't want to lose the money necessarily. So now they're looking at obviously stimulating with the Durst project you're talking about, which is decent. I mean, Bank of America.
I'm also talking about the New York Times.
New York Times.
Okay. I think you have to look at those projects.
I think it should be spent downtown.
Anything that happens in New York is good for New York.
I think it's good for New York.
The fact that Bank of America wants to come in and commit to a 1 million square foot building, and it's going to build at $600 or $700 a foot, and the multiplier effect of a construction dollar into the local economy is a long,
but would they build it? Would they build it on a prime corner without?
You also talk about extending the business district further west.
Yeah, but the question is,
8th Avenue and 40th Street. I think Worldwide Tower was built.
But 6th Avenue and 42nd Street, one could argue, is a fairly good address. The question is,
I think you have 2 properties nearby.
Okay, and this building's going to block one of them from the Grace Building. But the thing is that that's a real tough one because that's a fantastic location. It's a great tenant. Does it need underwriting to help it? And
does the New York Times need underwriting?
But what one would argue, I would say that 42nd Street and 6th Avenue is not the prime place that they should be putting the money. However, there's no other way that they're going to be able to, frankly, spend that money. Now, because it's not...
They can do the Home Depot. on.
They have a $1.7 billion. There's
a lot of
no
Home
place
Depots.
to put the money. Now, unless they adjust the law, and I think it should be, Kevin Ramp, who's president of
Only another
LNBC,
three.
said they should be spending it downtown. I think they should be.
The legislation was only for downtown originally.
But they can't get it there, so it's a conundrum. It's a tough
But the
thing to
commercial
do.
aspects that the legislation was designed to is just not enough to promote speculative development, new construction.
But how
the
fair
market
is
is
it?
not there for
How
that.
fair is it to subsidize? I own property all around there. How fair is it to subsidize, 6th Avenue, 42nd Street for
I
the
don't know. The
they
Grace
look at all
building
the
is
stuff,
building.
but the
I would love to have the
subsidies
Grace
were
building
always there.
subsidized,
We
you
had
know,
the
but
VIP
we
subsidies
didn't.
going on the west
You own the Grace
side.
building?
But you didn't have it for locations like 42nd Street and 6th Avenue.
Right, Norman, but I think you're talking about a circumstance where you're talking about a major financial giant committing to New York.
Can we
and
stop describing Bank of America as a major financial tenant? A great
I mean, it's
tenant.
not Wachovia, but
Come on.
No, this is a Wachovia region.
That's right.
It's a Wachovia
No, why don't we
market.
just
Those
say
guys off.
any major bank based
credit
major
tenant.
financial
major
institution.
bank, any financial institution based in the Carolinas is a significant major
Exactly.
bank.
Wait a
Okay, so
second.
the-
Is Wachovia happy about financing, subsidizing the Bank of America?
I have no idea. Do I care? I don't care. It's good for the city. I go back to.
There you go.
I agree
Well,
with Billy in
one of
that
these
You
respect.
need
But-
announcements that are
I
good
I
for
think
the
that they
city.
would do it anyway, that's all.
I think they would, Norman, I think you're absolutely right. I think they probably would do it. I think what's a more controversial issue is whether or not there should be an eminent domain proceeding to knock out Bernstein. That's a
what's
different
controversial about that?
But they did the
That's an
same thing.
inside joke for my guests.
They did the same thing downtown when they took eminent domain and they tried to take 45 Wall.
Right? They did eminent domain when they built the World Trade Center.
Yes.
They took Radio Alley, they took everything, and that's the way it was done.
But when you
Okay.
do that, when
But
when
you
do
have
that
one
for a
holdout. Can the building be built around it? I'm not against the taking. I'm just saying it's an interesting
That's a
conversation.
special individual
It's
who's
an
the holdout.
it's-
But you know what? That's not really the subject. Okay, the question is the financing on the Liberty bonds. You know, I think what the city, the state, and everyone has been doing. I think the city is growing. You know, as we all said, the economy is doing much better. 15 million square feet of over 30,000 square feet in office spaces. People bidding for properties, Germans, Europeans, Middle East. Everybody likes Manhattan, and I think that's, you know, the venue.
And I think
Everyone
they're right.
over here is game, and you're looking hard. If you had to look somewhere else, and we don't have too much time, what's your opinion of the Gold Coast? Or, as you said, what is the Gold Coast? Jersey City, Hoboken?
West Palm. That's the Gold Coast.
That's where you really want to go.
That's the Gold Coast.
Well,
like
that's
the
where
Amalfi
people from
Coast.
Brooklyn go after a certain age.
Jersey City is not the Gold Coast to me. And all the people that have done that are winding up back in Manhattan now that they know we're not
But
sinking into the ocean.
one of the things, again, you go back to, the thing that's making it attractive or even is that they finally got residential development going in there, so they've got some people. Otherwise, it was a ghost town. And that's
The only thing incredible about the
ghost.
the Gold Coast is the view of Manhattan.
Okay.
the view of
Which is
Manhattan is
beautiful.
spectacular.
It's a great
And
view of Manhattan.
But how do you get here? You
you
can't keep.
got the
when you
pass,
you
you
can't
got the
keep
ferries,
going.
you got the
The ferries
pass and the
and the ferries
ferries.
are
I mean,
one of the
one of the
greatest things. Do you wanna travel on that every time you have to come to Manhattan?
One of the things that's inducing Goldman
said to
to
him a
think
lot.
about the Site 26 is in terms of what that does in terms of its juxtaposition between New York and New
We have
Jersey.
30 seconds, okay? When you're doing a show with 5 dynamic individuals and you're talking about commercial office space, it's really a great opportunity that you are all here this evening. I'd like to thank Billy Macklow, Jonathan Mechanic, Ken Swig, Rob Varone, and Norman Sterner for being here. Hopefully you'll maybe back on an upcoming show. Next month, we move from commercial office buildings. We talk about developments north of 96th Street. Thank you, and I'll see you next month.
Funding for the Stoller Report is made possible by a grant from the First American Title Insurance Company of New York. The First American Corporation is the nation's leading diversified provider of business information products and services that impact the major events of people's lives.